Otherwise, may I pass over now to the Chief Executive. Simon.
Thank you, Malcolm. I think most of the substantive questions we're covering later on in the agenda, so I would just supplement that by recording that I've, as is usually the case, done a number of parliamentary committee hearings recently, and in particular just underlined the focus on social care, which has been the subject of inquiry both at the House of Lords on Monday and the House of Commons yesterday. And the points that I've been making on those occasions have been that when we set out the 5-year forward view, we were, I think, crystal clear that in order for the NHS to be able to bring about the improvements we all want to see, we do need a well-resourced social care system that is keeping up with increased social care demand. I think the pressures are obvious in terms of the rising number, particularly of frail older people who find themselves in hospital when they and their families would like to be able to come home. We've seen in the last 3 years a doubling in the number of formally measured delayed discharge days in hospital, equivalent to about 6,500 hospital beds at any one time being occupied by people who are ready to go home. And that's probably a low-end estimate. That's just the way the official measure works. And when you look at the way that measure is constructed, we can now see that the majority of delayed discharges are actually in some way or another attributable to the availability or lack thereof of social care services. It's worth just kind of remembering that about 2/3 of hospital inpatients are over the age of 65, and more than a quarter of hospital inpatients have got dementia. So we're serving many of the same people in different parts of the public service. And this obviously represents huge change since the NHS was founded. In 1948, half of people in this country died before the age of 50. Now, a third of children born are likely to be living to more than 100. So these are pressures that are only going to increase. We're going to have 1 million more people over the age of 75 by the end of this Parliament than at the beginning. And that's why the stance that we've been taking is to say our view is that we need a kind of 3-part approach to sorting out the pressures in social care. First, that there needs to be immediate financial support, and that where extra funding to be available, social care should be front of the queue. The Local Government Association has estimated that the social care, the adult social care funding gap for next year, 2017-18, is around 1.3 billion. Other independent estimates put it at perhaps 1.9 billion, people like the King's Fund, the Health Foundation, and the Nuffield Trust. So obviously the increases that will be raised through the social care precept are a contribution to that, but don't wholly by any means close that gap. But there clearly is the first step has got to be some immediate support. The second has got to be that as we roll out the SDP process through the country, we've got to have better health and social care integration in care delivery and assessment. And the third is that, in my opinion, we will need, post-2020, a wider debate on security in old age, and that will need to look at a more profound set of changes to the way social care is financed, alongside other aspects of the support that older people get. So I think increasingly this agenda is now being recognised. I said yesterday that I felt that the country had moved from denial to acknowledgement of the fact that there's an issue, and obviously now we need to move from acknowledgement to action on those 3 fronts. The only other point I think I would say, Malcolm, by way of getting us kicked off, is obviously a lot of our discussions are focused on the pressures in A&E departments, the sort of operational here and now. We sometimes forget that on a range of other, the health service is a very comprehensive set of services, and the discussion we're going to be having with Callie on cancer care, for example, the cancer one-year survival rate figures were published a fortnight ago, received no coverage whatsoever. What they actually show is that the quality of cancer care in the NHS has improved again over the course of the last year, so that 2,400 families around the country will have a loved one with them this Christmas who would not have been alive last Christmas. And on any of the major measures you look, you can see those kinds of gains. And in the spirit of your conversation, Malcolm, about joint work with other agencies, the board of the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority is meeting this morning to consider whether to begin accepting licences for a groundbreaking new treatment called mitochondrial donation. And in the event that they decide that they will accept those, then we at NHS England are this morning committing to funding up to £8 million worth for a clinical trial over the next 5 years, which will be a world first and will produce potentially huge benefits for mums in which they would get a form of IVF, in which the future baby's mitochondrial DNA comes from a donor egg, so they don't pass on the inherited condition. Just another example of the kinds of innovations that actually the NHS is getting on with, building on our heritage as being the world leader on modern cataract surgery and hip replacements and vaccines and other cancer treatments and so on. So we mustn't forget that as well.
Simon, thank you. May I invite any questions or comments on the Chief Executive's report? No, well, thank you very much for that.